Alan, thank you. Welcome to Offsiders. Well, it was the 80s all over again as Hawthorn ran away with the AFL Grand Final in front of 100,000 people at the MCG. Geelong were out of character, out of touch and out of ideas after going into the game having won 42 of their last 44 games. They shut down Hawthorn stars like Mitchell, Franklin and Roughhead, and yet still other Hawks rose to the occasion.
Must run in a straight line and kick the goal, and he misses.
Rioli thought about going back. Now he's got the crumb. Franklin didn't take the mark, but all's well that ends well.
That's what I'm talking about!
And in Rugby League, it's a repeat of last year. Manly and Melbourne Storm will go at each other in next Sunday's Grand Final. Both had easy wins on the way through. And off the field, the Cameron Smith suspension has boiled over. It's now all-out war between the NRL and Storm.
Why is it Cameron Smith that pays the price? Is it a Melbourne thing? We'll make a stand with a grapple tackle with a Melbourne player?
Roy, a lot more on this later, but it's getting nasty.
Well, it was nasty. I think the Storm will concentrate only on the grand final against Manly. I think that all the negativism will go and they'll concentrate on the job at hand. OK, well, let's concentrate on the AFL job at hand. Gerard Whateley, please explain.
Well, it was a thrilling upset and it was a worthy match of a grand final in front of a magical crowd. And beyond that, I actually find it a little bit difficult to assess. And I think history's always written from the winner's point of view, and I've heard it glibly said that Hawthorn proved to be the better team. And I just think that's far too simplistic. There was a period of sustained domination that Geelong had in the second quarter and early in the third, where they scored 11 consecutive behinds. 9 of those they kicked themselves, so you can take the rushs out of that. I just think it was a massive choke by the team who's proved themselves to be the best in footy for a while. And when momentum swung, it inevitably does, Hawthorn harnessed it and ran all over them. And all power to Hawthorn, but I think you have to look at both sides of the coin as to what happened
26
yesterday.
points, Caro.
It was a big win. It was a very big win, but it was the margin belies the game itself, which was a thriller. I mean, in the first quarter, I don't think 10 goals have been kicked in a first quarter in a grand final since 1989, prophetically. And I think it was 8-2 that day, but it was 5 goals all. And Barry, it had everything, and it proved yet again that the home and away rounds count for nothing. September is what the AFL competition is all about. Brisbane proved that. They were never the best team in any of their 3 premiership years at the end of the season. Essendon, of course, should have won 3. We reckon in the late 90s, early 2000s, they only got 1. Port Adelaide, 2 dominated for 3 years in a row and only got 1 flag. It's all very well to say Geelong will come back next year and on paper they're the best team, but they might never get another opportunity.
Well, let's have a look at some of the celebrations from last night. The Hawthorn supporters all turned up at Federation Square to cheer on their players and Caro again. It's they're a good story.
It's a great story. In 1996, Barry, only 12 years ago, they almost merged with the Melbourne Football Club. This football club almost ceased to exist just over a decade ago. They were saved by several people, famously Don Scott, their famous old ruckman, held up a jumper that would have been the hybrid, and that's what forced the members to vote against it. The Melbourne members voted to merge, so Hawthorn survived. They're not only now the AFL Premier, but they are the wealthiest club at the moment on paper. They're going to make a profit of some $4 million this year. They're richer than Collingwood in terms of the money they're going to make this year.
And the team itself, it's the prototype for how to build a club. They've done it in 4 years under Alistair Clarkson, and in the first 6 months of his reign, they were playing as badly as Melbourne played this year.
They're the first team, in fact,
hopeless.
aren't they? The first team to bottom out and win a flag.
Yeah, they protected all their first-round picks that they already had. They went twice to the bottom and picked up their priority picks. They used them well. They got Hodge with the first set, and that was they traded for that, and then they got Franklin and Roughhead with the second.
And if you go through their list, a huge proportion are country footballers from all around Australia. Maybe that matters. We'll be crossing live to Hawthorn's president Jeff Kennett very shortly, but let's hear from the captain now, Sam Mitchell.
I was just saying to the boys on the table that I can't even remember the last few minutes. We were running around just out on our legs. We had a couple of blokes down, so just the 20 of us were able to finish the game. But it was a great way to finish, and I think that we'll hopefully be able to enjoy the rest of the week and try and get the memory back for the last 5 minutes.
Well, we'll recall some of those memories now, and we'll go to the first quarter first. And as you said, it was a great quarter because 10 goals were kicked. There were some great goals, none better than Cam Mooney's from Geelong.
Some body work down there. Mooney almost. It came back to him in the role of a drummer. The Cam's down. It still goes 20 metres. Taken by Mooney. All the time in the world assessing the options. Good closed down defence. Brings something special.
Now to Osborne, to Bateman, hard running, can kick a goal. 49 out, low, straight, a beauty.
In front, a chance for the Hawks. Williams, Rockhead turns around and kicks another one.
And at that stage, look, I think everybody thought we're in for a real cracker here.
We did, and there was that amazing bump that Scarlett did on Buddy Franklin right on the Geelong emblem, which really set the tone for the afternoon. It wasn't a physical bun fight, but it was very physical, wasn't it?
Well, well, let's have a look at some of the action in the second quarter now, and I think that's when Hawthorn really did start to show their aggression. And what's noticeable about this, we're not talking tackles here, we're talking bumps,
and that was
which is a bit unusual.
That was the last act of a desperate man. Crode was heading off the ground with a broken foot at that stage. Ablett got skittled. Gee, that was really fierce and hard work coming off the square by Sam Mitchell, who had a couple of cracks at Ablett, and the second one in the third quarter may have proved costly. That's the bump of the grand final. They were both hurt, and Ablett, Scarlett kept his footing, and down went Franklin. Yeah, it was everything you would expect from a grand final. There were as many bruises as there were possessions at various stages. The tackling
Right, well,
was
some of
ferocious.
those rugby league finals, Roy.
What I can't understand is what all these points that the winner have sacrificed and still won. How does that happen?
Well, the points were Geelong's great nemesis, but they were Hawthorn's great victory. I mean, every time they rushed to behind, it does break every rule of footy, as does playing injured players. I mean, they broke a lot of rules yesterday and won Hawthorn. It propelled them into attack. It was the perfect way, because the Geelong forward line was down, Roy, and it proved to be quite a smart tactic.
Well, it did two things. It took the pressure off Hawthorn and then gave them an opportunity to go forward.
11 rush behinds for the day.
That's all
I kept thinking in the last quarter, if this ends up being a one-kick or a two-kick game, how are we going to reflect on this? I do think, away from all that happened yesterday, I think it will push to the forefront the debate about the future of the rush behind.
Well,
but
you could
can
say...
I just say this, as much as you say it was a physical contest, in the end it ended up being psychological, didn't it? Because of all those missed goals by Geelong, in the end it ate away at them psychologically, and in the end they just couldn't come back.
The Geelong supporter over here has made a massive statement. You're saying they choked?
Yeah, I think they mental disintegration.
It just took a psychological toll.
The game
One
plan,
inglorious miss after the other.
The game plan eroded, and Mark Thompson said that after the game. He subtly suggested his team had been selfish, and there were some selfish acts.
I suppose you could argue after 17 years it was Hawthorn win was overdue, but it was certainly because of Dew, Stuart Dew. Let's have a look at the highlights in the third quarter, and Stuart Dew front and centre.
Taylor, whoops, some indecision. Taylor surrounded by Hawks. Strong tackle, got him down by Bateman. Hodge, Jew, kicks a goal. He stumbles, but the boy from South Fremantle gives it back to Jew. He's in desperate trouble. Hen passes back, Williams goes in. Bounces it through.
Still with Buddy, well done Scarlett. Still with Franklin though. Now Jew could kick this, and he has. He's had the best 5 minutes of his footy life.
Probably unfair to call him the fattest man in football, but it takes you back to the days of Mick Nolan. Like, the guy is big. And
that is the great thing about our game, Roy. We are very inclusive, and when you see a bloke like that...
You haven't seen a fat front row forward.
But
they're all fat in your game.
He had a bit of a niggle, and that's why he went from the back line to the forward line, because he wasn't keeping up, and then it turned the game.
He was in my best three at the end, because that 5-minute period cast the die, determined the game in Hawthorn's favour. He was recruited to the club for this very reason. He was a premiership player with Port Adelaide who retired for a year, and Alistair Clarkson thought he could add something, some experience when it really mattered, and it was complete vindication of player and coach.
And almost fell out with his match committee in the process.
As a
he
plan
argued that one.
Perfectly came together.
Well, the final quarter now, and this is when Hawthorn ices the cake.
Well, flying through down there was Birchall.
Quickly on Franklin. Oh, he's done it. He's done it. He's put the icing on the cake. Mitchell quickly goes on to the left foot. The captain's kicked the goal. Looks up. You can see a lot of possibilities. Lewis, the first of them, should go on and kick the goal. Measures it, roughhead. Got it. So the big guns have kicked a goal each in the last quarter, roughhead and Hawthorn.
Well, you said you had Stuart Dew in your top three. I think Hawthorn supporters were delighted that Luke Hodge was given the Norm Smith medalist. For mine, Gary Ablett in a losing side, and I thought Sewell was Hawthorn's best.
I thought, I read this today by Jake Nile in the Sunday Age, that they probably did Ablett a favour by not giving him the medal. I mean, he missed out on the Brownlow, that he probably was the best player of the year, maybe should have won on Monday night. To get up on that stage when all his teammates were so devastated, to win the medal his father had won in similar circumstances 19 years later, I don't think that would have made him a happy man.
Hodge personified everything that Hawthorn has stood for, the courage and the sacrifice, where he's probably played with a fractured rib, the dramatic scene or the graphic scenes from last week, and he never flinched yesterday. He put himself in harm's way all day. He plays centre half everywhere down back, and he's constructed it all. And while I had Ablett, Hodge, Dew, I have no beef with Hodge winning the medal.
OK, well, one of the happiest people in the country today is Hawthorn President Jeff Kennett, a former Victorian Premier, of course. And to talk to him as a fanatical Hawthorn supporter, former Test cricketer Damien Fleming. Damien, over to you.
Thanks, Barry. I know we're totally unbiased at the Offsiders, but we're a happy team at Hawthorn, and there's no one happier than the president of the Hawthorn Football Club, Jeff Kennett. Thanks for joining us, Jeff. Talk us through the last 24 hours.
Well, it has been exciting, and I suppose when you wake up and you reflect on what's happened, there's two feelings. One of great pride in the club and what it stands for, but also tremendous pride in what was achieved yesterday among the coaching group and the players, because in the end, as our Warriors were falling, Crody and Youngie and Buddy got a bad knock and Chance Bateman was wearing a headgear, the determination that was shown by the rest of the team to keep going was amazing. So yesterday's win was gutsy. It was real true grit, and you can't be anything else but impressed by that.
And there's one bloke, you think the spiritual leader down there, we say Luke Hodge, but what about Shane Crawford? What about the emotions? You took over 3 years ago as president of the Hawthorn Football Club. What did you think about Crawford when you first took over, and to see him celebrate a victory 16 seasons in must have been fantastic?
Extraordinary. And remember, about 3-4 years ago, Crawford was deciding whether he was going to stay at the club or not, because when Alistair joined us 4 years ago, he decided to commit the club to rebuilding, and so we had to release a lot of our older players. And Crawford didn't know whether he was going to be in that or not, or whether he wanted to stay. He made a decision to stay. He is going to finish out his career with one club, which I think should be the objective of all players. And along the way, he's been captain of the club for a number of years. He's won a Brownlow, and now he's a member of a premiership team. And I guess that spirit, that length of service, epitomises the good and the best values of Hawthorn.
That's fair. And what about Alistair Clarkson? Bit of a controversial choice, because Hawthorn have always had ex-Hawthorn players as coaches. He come on board, him and Jason Dunstall, 3 years on, or 4 years on, he's a premiership coach.
And I'm glad you mentioned Jason, because Jason was acting CEO at the club at that time, and it was Jason who introduced Alistair to the club under the chairmanship of Ian Dicker. But I don't think our full body of membership fully appreciates the importance of Jason Dunstall to what happened yesterday. Jason is on our board still. He's our football connect. He and Alistair are very close. They're often challenged, and they don't mind challenging each other. But Don Scott saved the club in '96. Ian Dicker led it through the difficult periods. Jason Dunstall appointed Alistair, made a decision to young the club. And here we are in 2006, being the only club at this stage in the sport's history that has won a premiership in the 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s, and now early 2000s, 5 decades in a row. The only club that can do it or matches is Carlton, I believe, who, if they win next year, having won in the other 4 decades, could match Hawthorn. But no one else is there as we speak.
What about, you've won, fantastic. As president now, you've got over 40,000 members. Waverley is an amazing facility out there. What's your plan for the next 2 or 3 years?
Well, the important thing I think everyone would say is not to become complacent. So next year we're trying to drive our membership up to that magic 50,000. When we set our business plan in place some time ago, it was for 2 premierships within 5 years with a membership of 50,000. So we'll stay very focused on that plan. You'll adjust it slightly at the margin, and you might extend the time frame. But this is a wonderful moment right now. we have made history, the boys have made history, but now, shortly, after a period of time to breathe all this in, we've got a plan for the next lap. And I can assure you, the only thing we've got to worry about is complacency.
Jeff, just the last question here. When did you think we'd won yesterday? It was hard, wasn't it? You know what a great team Geelong is. 5 goals up with 5 minutes to go, thinking they can kick this. When did you feel like we'd won it?
Alex Jezelenko was sitting 2 rows behind me yesterday, and about 10 minutes out, he yelled out to me and offered his hand to shake it and say, "You've won it." And I said, "Alex, that's the handshake of potential death." So I wasn't happy till about 2 minutes before, but I got a bit choked up a couple of minutes before that. I thought, we're actually going to make it. And but it wasn't until 2 minutes before that I actually thought we had it locked away.
Yeah, and sorry, last question here. You talked about earlier before the game as a legacy, and obviously you're Victorian Premier. What will be your biggest legacy, as Victorian Premier or as President of the rebirth of the Hawthorn Football Club?
They're both very different. Management of a state has very serious responsibilities and you deal with a lot of money.
So's the Hawthorn presidency,
But
Jeff.
the emotion attached to politics is very low. At Hawthorn, a footy club, the money side of it is very small, but the emotions are unlimited. And I've come to realise now, it's my great lesson having been president for 3 years, and that is how important football is to so many people around the country and sport. After family and after their employment, which often causes stress from time to time, sport often gives them a balance in their lives. It allows them to let off steam. It allows them to forget the things that cause them angst. So if you ask me what was more important in terms of the welfare of the community, I've got to say, probably the football premiership does more for a person's soul than a political premiership, because the political premiership is only enjoyed by those who are politicians, their minders, and of course people like Barry, who lives and breathes politics. But for the majority of the public,
and sport too,
have
Jeff
no
Kennett.
time for politics.
Damien, I've got one last question for you
Football,
too.
sport stirs the juices and helps people stay fit and to some degree sane.
I totally agree with you. It was magnificent being there today, and you talk about the emotion and the balance in people's life. But Jeff, fantastic. Thanks for joining us today, and good luck for the next couple of years.
Thank you very much indeed,
Damien, just before you go, I've got one question for you. Was yesterday better than taking a hat-trick in a test match?
Probably the first hat-trick, but the one that Warney dropped, I would have taken over the premiership yesterday. But it was fantastic. Bad luck to Jared in there as well. But backing up what Jeff said, it's amazing. Go to grand finals. I love going and watching whoever it is, but when it's your own team, and just to go with your 6-year-old boy Braden, what it means to someone like that, and to see the crowd around you, that's why AFL is what we are as Melbourneites, and it was fantastic, and let's hope we can go back to back next year.
Damien Fleming,
Thanks,
thank
boys.
you, and please thank Jeff Kennett for us. Thank you.
And if Jeff needs a tiebreaker, they can't take this premiership away.
Yes. Sure. And just before we leave the AFL, there was one howler yesterday. I know this won't be comfortable for you to watch again, Jared, but Brad Ottens was going forward at one stage in the game. He had, look, they were 15 metres away for the nearest player to Lonergan, and he didn't handball on.
That said so much that moment. It was one of 3 in the third quarter where Geelong, who have built their success on the cult of team, had players who didn't do what was expected. Ottens should have gone to Lonergan. Chapman should have gone to Steve Johnson. Instead, he snapped the behind. And then Matthew Stokes inexplicably didn't give the 1-2 hand pass back to Ablett. And I actually think that's what started to fray with Geelong, is they subscribe so wholeheartedly to this cult, is when it starts to break down, it led where it led by the end.